Welcome to Disability Sector The Truth. Today I'm with Judi from the Hutt Autism group. Welcome to the program, Judi. It's a pleasure to speak with you today.
Thank you for having me.
So, my first question is a stock standard question. How has the cuts over the last 10 months affected you or someone that you care for or an organisation that you run?
From the organisation that I run, which is Hutt Autism Group, we look after, we started off as a place for parents to meet up. And the cuts broke people. I had phone calls from people crying on their bathroom floor. I've had people thinking that they can't go on. I have had to ask so many people the question, I know it's hard, and you want to kill yourself, do you have a plan to kill yourself? So I've been on suicide watch since the 18th of March for not just one family, but numerous.
So just to clarify, you have had clients with suicidal issues.
I've had clients get driven to the only solution for them being, and the heartbreak is suicide.
Wow.
Because of the cuts and the lack of respect of what we do.
That's incredible. So, but incredibly sad to hear as well. That people are being driven to that feeling that they must not want to be here anymore. It's actually horrific. What about your own personal experiences? Have you had any issues with your own autism and other disabilities?
So I've come into autism late. I started as a parent of an autistic son who is totally amazing. But for most of his childhood, he was raised very happily in Australia, where the access to occupational therapy, speech therapy, early intervention, playgroups that support learning to cope in the world that we live in are readily available. And in New Zealand, we arrived, and there's this beautiful word that's called taki waitanga, which is the Māori word for autism. And it means in your own time and place, which is fantastic. But to me, it feels like the powers of be have got hold of that and read it as, well, they'll be fine and they don't need support, because the lack of support in this region is horrendous. It's out of 125 families, I can only think of 4 that have had access to an occupational therapist. Now, understanding that from the age of 2.5 until 11, my son had weekly occupational therapy in an occupational therapy specific environment, not his home. But 6 families out of 125 have only had between 6 and 10 sessions at a hospital. That's ridiculous.
That's an extremely poor number. Extremely. So, some of the people that we spoke to during this series have said that they have spoke to the minister, they haven't spoke to the minister. Has you as a local organisation been able to connect with either the disability minister or the new support task force responding?
No, but I've tended to stay away from the political environment. We have talked with the local area NASC, because that's another issue that breaks families' hearts. And also that awareness as a parent is you want to put your child in the best light. And the phrase is, we're better off than other people. we're doing really well, we've got everything handled, is phrases that come out of a parent's mouth really quickly, and they forget the struggles that they do.
But I will ask, how does it make? I know you say you don't try to bring the political side into it, but if you do use social media and you see the post from Louise Upston, from Minister Bishop about going to RDA or whatever it might be, how does that make you feel as not only
My
as
comments,
a
my comments get
organizer?
deleted. If I comment, they
Or,
generally get deleted. I love the idea that these people are real people, but I don't think they live in the real world. I did suggest for a time that maybe UHAG should have a pamper session for the mums, and we do our nails and we display beautiful nails for Penny, because apparently that's what we spend our carer support payments on, but we
yeah, yeah.
don't.
So how is it how is it to hear from the former minister Penny Simmons and the current minister Louise Upton that they are still targeting these parents, saying it's their fault, it's their fault.
It's
They
heartbreaking.
did that.
It's heartbreaking and it's wrong. And if they had to spend even an hour in our shoes of a regular person, not a person that is earning the sums of money that a minister earns, where they can hire privately or they can place their child into a residential that probably costs more money than some of my families earn in the process of 5 years. Um, these parents are doing things that parents don't need to do. When you have a child, you think that you're going to raise them until they're 18, 19, 22, and then you will support them as they grow into adults. But there's families out there where their children will never grow into what we consider people that have adult responsibilities, the ability to answer the phone and say hello. Yeah.
Yep,
There's
yep.
people out there that their children will never do that. Their children will never be able to have a shower on their own. And there's going to be parents that are 60, 70, 80 years old that are still having to bathe and change their child's nappies when they're well into their 50s and 60s without the support of the government. That breaks my.
Yeah, yeah. You bring up that point. So recent at the end of 2024, the minister constantly argued that there was no cut, no cut, no cuts. But clearly, we are seeing cuts. It's undeniable because people can't even get into respite care, let alone residential care.
Yeah,
So does it also make you sad that she pushes that point as well?
it breaks my heart. There is no cuts in the form of there's a giant pool of money that they just keep using. That's like saying a swimming pool has no water restrictions because it's going through a filter. And basically, the filter is the people that get individualized funding and things like that. They can't use that money at the moment. So there's no support and therapies other than a wait list, and the wait lists have been reduced because basically if you're on a wait list for a certain amount of time, they close it and reopen it to make it a false amount of money. But you can't use your individualized funding for those therapies that could help.
Yes.
There's no respite. The suggestion when I arrived in New Zealand and I got carer support was I was actively encouraged that we didn't need individualized funding, and that has gone throughout the 7 years that we've been here, that I do not need individualized funding for my son, that carer support is all I require. And then they turn around and say carer support is a koha at $80 an hour for a 24-hour period, but I can't use it for therapy. I can't use it for things that would help my son. I can get him an iPad, but he's 19. He's growing past an iPad, but he still needs support. He needs a phone, yeah,
Yeah.
with GPS so that I know where he is and I can get there if I need to. We can't use it for petrol, even though some of the activities he does might be further afield because there is nothing available for him here. Yeah, the money's all there. Of course, it hasn't been reduced. It's just getting put back into the pool because nobody can access it. So it's not a reduction of money, it's a reduction of usability and support.
I love that analogy. So so what would you like to see? Because this has obviously been a successive government problem. No government's imperfect. We'll put a hand up and say that. But have you have you got any ideas on what you would like to see? And have you been impressed with or not impressed with the fighting response from the current opposition parties?
I think the response needs to be louder and stronger. I do know that they are working a little bit in the community with individual families, but I do think it needs to be louder and stronger. I think the changes that would make the biggest difference would be to allow the funds to be used for therapies. I think that the funds should be goal driven. I do have a background that before we left Australia, we were on the NDIS, which is a completely goal driven system. And it has its own problems, as we're seeing at the moment, but at least therapy was included because therapy reaches a goal. Items that a person needs were included because it reaches a goal. So the goal for all of us, from children to adults, is to be a success for ourselves and for our communities. Now, I don't mean a success as we have 10 houses that we rent out. I mean a success that we
Right.
wake up in the morning and we feel our own value and we're able to share that value amongst the community to grow as a community. And that's the ability that all people have. Look at,
Mhm.
if we look at you doing this, there would be the Pennies and the Louises of the world that say there's no way that he can be a valued member of society. But we're already seeing you are creating success for yourself and others, creating a community and creating a success in that community.
Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. So what I would ask then is, would you like to see a widened version of what the previous Labour government had up until it was cut on March last year?
Yes, actually,
So
I'd like to see what was proposed 6 or 7 years ago, that once a rigorous process, which it is. The needs assessment process is done, and the needs assessor says this is the amount of funds that will help create support for this person to become a success. So that money will go into their separate bank account and they can use it to reach their goals. That was what was the proposed 6 or 7 years ago, and I believe that should happen. I don't believe that we should have to do this horrendous budgeting method
Yes.
of the pay and wait. Because the other thing is there's a delay in payment. That's not so much with the individualized funding, but with carer support, where if your only diagnosis is autism, that's what you're going to get. There's 10 to 15 working days before you get the money to use that. So quite often you pay somebody out of your own pocket and then you have to wait before you can get that money. So it causes financial strain on families as well. So yeah, I'd like to see the pool of money given and it be accounted for at the end.
My final question to you is, what would be, we are trying to get Louisa on this program. What would be your message to her to encourage her to come on this program? And I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to give your plea before we finished today.
I think Louisa needs to come on programs like this to hear from the real people and not from the people that have a watered down version. So it's a lot easier to say how hard it is when you're looking face to face at somebody, whereas when you're going through a process of asking for something after so many times getting told what you need to do, it's a watered down approach. So I think hearing from people and actually listening and being respectful that you have had to do it will create a greater understanding. I know there's an economic crisis worldwide, but it's not the vulnerable that need to pay for it. Because ultimately, how the vulnerable pay for it is lives. Yeah, and it's up to tiny little organisations like Upper Hutt Autism Group to keep these families going. And she's got a lot more resources than Upper Hutt Autism Group does. So yeah, I think coming on this and actually having to be accountable to the people that she's affecting will change her initial response easier, because underneath it all, she is human. She is part of the community. She has so many facets, and being a member is one of them. But actually using some of that compassion that I really hope she has, and that her family and friends see, and sharing that with the vulnerable would be a great thing for her.
Well, what I would say is thank you for coming on the show, and I'll get you to stay there and like and subscribe this video, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jude.
Thank you.